Hello everybody, my name is Zen, and this is our Indie Game Spotlight, where this week we are looking at Thomas Was Alone. This game is a puzzle platformer, which may discourage you immediately from wanting to play it. Why? Because the indie game market right now is just completely saturated with puzzle platformers. And there are some really good ones, but for the most part there are some just really average ones and some pretty bad ones out there. In fact, the whole indie game craze with the puzzle platformers, you could argue, was started with two really successful games, which were Super Meat Boy and Braid. Thankfully for us, Thomas Was Alone is not necessarily your run-of-the-mill platformer. In fact, there are several distinct features that will set it out amongst all of the rest. The first is that you play as a block. Well, you actually play as a series of blocks, and technically they're not blocks, they're polygons, but you get the point. That in itself sounds fairly generic until you realize that each block has its own personality. In fact, the first block you play as is named Thomas, and thus the game title.
Thomas was alone. Wow, a weird first thought to have.
That game title is actually really misleading because Thomas isn't actually alone, as you'll quickly find out when you meet another block named Chris. And in fact, you'll go throughout the entire game meeting a ton of other characters and blocks that you'll be able to play as.
Chris took an immediate and deep dislike to the skinny red rectangle. Who the hell did this Thomas think he was?
The whole point of the game is to get your character to a specified spot in the level that is clearly marked by a white border, but this is quite easy, in the first few levels. But then as you acquire more characters, you realize that you have to get each character to each individual block at the end that is marked for them. Now, some of these can be in random parts of the level, sometimes very far away from each other, and you have to switch between the characters using two keys, which are default by Q and E on the keyboard. Once you get all of the characters to the end, the level will end and it'll move on to the next level. But this leads into the second major part of the game, which derives itself from just a fact of life, which is that, unfortunately, not everyone was made equal. Some people are just better at other things than you are, and that's okay. Why? Because you're probably better at things that they may suck at, which philosophically should draw everybody together to help one another overcome whatever skills they are lacking in, right? Well, with this game, each block has its own strengths and weaknesses. For example, Thomas is really good at jumping, but Chris is terrible at it. And however, Chris can actually fit into very small spaces that Thomas may not be able to. And he can reach buttons that way that will, expand the level and allow you to go further. Now, what helps Chris get to areas that he may not be able to reach to is he can actually jump onto Thomas and then onto whatever ledge he's trying to get to. So you gotta help each other out with overcoming the deficiencies of your individual characters.
Okay, this was more like it. A glowy white thing. Only Chris could get to it, which of course made it all the more enticing. What would it do? What new opportunity might this switch open up to him?
Each character is also given a really intriguing personality by the use of a narrator who does just a phenomenal job of projecting emotion onto each of these blocks, which in itself is a great achievement considering blocks are fairly emotionless if you're just staring at them.
Chris stared at Thomas with pure hatred. He seemed so very happy at their situation. Friends together, a brave fellowship of quadrilaterals on a quest for greatness.
And the art style actually lends itself really well to this. You see, keeping things simple allows for greater expansion of each individual character and more emphasis on what the developer wants you to focus on. You may notice that the blocks themselves are vibrantly colored, but the world is quite dark and mysterious. As far as a little bit of the story goes, the world itself is set within a computer mainframe, and each of the blocks are actually artificial intelligent routines that have gone a little out of control and created themselves some completely random personalities. While playing through the game, you quickly realize that the gameplay itself becomes almost second nature and a subconscious routine, because your focus continues to shift more onto the blocks and their personalities. It may seem a little silly, but you begin to like certain characters and dislike other ones, and you become more focused on what's going to happen in the story more than the puzzles you're trying to figure out. But as I said earlier, it is a great achievement to have a narrator project a personality onto a block that is emotionless. And for you to care about that is just a huge achievement. It really is. Thomas Was Alone is one of those games that will really hook you, and I'm not even kidding. I enjoyed the crap out of it. I remember I got home one early afternoon on a Sunday. I was just trying to relax and just have a nice afternoon. And I saw this game on Steam and I picked it up and I, without realizing it, played through from start to finish. Just blew right through it, and it was one of those experiences that you'll have where you look back on it fondly, because not only was it a relaxing experience, but it was also intriguing. In fact, I feel like I came out of the end of the game almost learning something, not only about games, but maybe something about myself. But that is an experience that you may or may not have. With all of that being said, please leave any feedback that you have for this Indie Spotlight series, or share any thoughts and experiences you have with Thomas Was Alone in the comment section below. And on that note, we shall see you guys next time.